Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be recapping our reviews from the month of November 2024. This video will feature three things: a discussion of our favorite coffee this month, as well as any honorable mentions, our upcoming coffee of the month, and anything else pertaining to this channel that we feel is worth discussing or addressing. So let's go ahead and get started with our honorable mentions. And as always, these are in order of when we reviewed them on this channel. And first up, we have the Kelbesa, the wash processed Ethiopia from Blind Tiger Coffee out of Old Town, Maine. And Blind Tiger is a coffee roaster that continues to appear on this channel year after year, and one I've often identified as being one of the more underrated American-based coffee roasters, which is a sentiment that a lot of you guys seem to share as well, as I heard so much positive feedback about this coffee or one of Blind Tiger's other recent offerings. This one stood out to me largely due to the intensity that it did offer for a wash-processed Ethiopian coffee, and even though this one might not necessarily be on par with some of my favorite washed Ethiopians this year, this one did stand out this month as being one of my favorite coffees. Unfortunately, it is no longer available for purchase. In fact, the only coffee still available for purchase that we're going to be discussing today is the coffee of the month. Next up, we have the Ponderosa Gesha, the natural processed Panama from Mood Trap, based out of Singapore. And this one was a collaboration between Mood Trap and Airworks, and a coffee that initially caught my interest largely due to the fact that we were yet to review any of Mood Trap's Panamanian Geshas. And while this coffee was a natural processed coffee, I was still interested enough to try it out. And at its very best, I would say that it was definitely one of the more enjoyable natural processed coffees that we've had this year. The only sticking point for me on this coffee was that it was a little inconsistent and not necessarily always the cleanest. Even with that being said, relative to a lot of the other coffees we had this month, I definitely did enjoy this one, and I'm hoping to try some of Mood Trap's coffees here in the near future as well. All right, next up, we have the La Papaya Mejorado, the wash-processed Ecuador from Gut & Co., based out of Chengdu, China. And Gut & Co. is kind of an interesting coffee roaster. We still have one more review from them coming out. And for anybody that is interested in trying out Gut & Co., I believe that by the time this video is released, Airworks is going to be doing their special release for Gut & Co., Substance, and Kabuki. So if you haven't had an opportunity to check that out already, I would suggest it, as this is a coffee roaster that's caught the attention of a lot of other people. And that final review that we do have coming out of them is my favorite coffee that we did review from them in this series. And I'm going to be revisiting them here in the near future, as I've already had some discussions with Airworks about picking up some other of their coffees. But this one right here was pretty interesting in the sense that it didn't necessarily act like the majority of La Papaya Mejorados that we've reviewed this year, being a little bit more tea-like as opposed to that very strong sweetness that a lot of them have offered. Even then, I would say that it was definitely one of the more enjoyable coffees that we've had this month, because if I'm being completely honest, it was a slightly down month for the majority of the month. That being said, this one did stand out relative to a lot of the other Ecuadorian coffees that we had reviewed this year. I'm not entirely sure whether or not this coffee is available, as it's kind of tricky to get a gauge of what is still available from Gut & Co. All right, and that takes us to my favorite coffee this month, and I don't think this will come as a surprise to anybody. Gotta put the card back in. It is the Bature family, the wash-processed Kenya from Say Coffee out of Brooklyn, New York. And this is a very interesting one, as for the most part, I've still heard mostly mixed feedback on this coffee. But with that being said, at its very best, this is one of my favorite Kenyan coffees that we've ever reviewed on this channel. Though truth be told, it certainly wasn't reminiscent of the vast majority of Kenyan coffees that we've reviewed, as this one stood out to me due to its immense clarity, as well as wonderful sweetness and just extremely clean profile that skewed heavily in a more unique floral sense and a more unique fruit sense. And I felt like a lot of people struggled a little bit with this coffee, and it did take us some time to get this one at its very best. But when it was at its very best, I would say that it was one of my favorite coffees from the entirety of the year. Now, I do have to say it's not necessarily pushing my top 3 favorite, but even then, it kind of falls into that range just behind that, and it definitely skews well above what I would expect for the majority of washed Kenyan coffees. But I've already discussed enough about this coffee. We have a 15-minute review on it, and it's one that I had so much to say on. And by the end, I do have to say that it still remained one of my favorite coffees, and I'm very happy that I got an opportunity to try this one. Right. And that takes us to our coffee of the month, and that is the Ivan Gutierrez, which is a wash-processed Costa Rican Gesha. And the theme for this month's coffee of the month was non-traditional geisha, well, non-traditional origin geishas. And in this case, Costa Rica was the one that we went with. And I was pretty happy that not only did this coffee get nominated, but that it did end up winning, largely due to the fact that I have done a very poor job of reviewing Passenger this year. And a lot of that came because we did a lot of Passenger reviews last year. And as a result, we didn't have a lot of coffees from Passenger this year to try out that we hadn't already reviewed. This is one of the few exceptions, as I do believe that they have a relationship with Yvonne Gutierrez and they've offered a number of their coffees in previous years. The Geisha is one of the exceptions, as I have not had the opportunity to try this coffee in any setting before, whether it be a sample or even for ourselves. As you can see, the bag is still sealed, so we haven't even had an opportunity to open this one. It still does require a couple of extra days worth of rest. But in addition to that, Passenger did release a couple of other coffees that were yet to try from them, so the timing was just great. It was a perfect opportunity to revisit them, as they are one of my favorite American-based coffee roasters, and it's unfortunate that we didn't have a lot of opportunities to review them this year, but hopefully these couple of reviews will make up for that, as I'm very excited and interested to try out this coffee. And while we're on the subject of that, I did want to mention one more thing. So we were featured in an article from The Filter, so I did want to give a quick shout out to Wade. I'm going to include the article down below. And the content does include, I would say, less appreciated origins. And I did highlight Bolivian coffees, which is something that I have mentioned on this channel, I would say a number of times in the past. But I did find it to be an interesting concept and an interesting read, so I figured you guys might be interested in that as well, as there are a number of other people that have been quoted in that article too. So I just wanted to include that in this recap. And as mentioned, I did want to include briefly the Airworks special release, as I know a lot of people are going to be very interested in a lot of those coffees. So I just wanted to reiterate that one more time. Again, this upcoming month, we're going to have an extremely busy month. We're going to be doing our Cafe Box Advent Calendar Blind Taste Test Series, obviously our December monthly recap, and then at the end of the year, we're going to be doing our top 10 coffees of 2024 list. So definitely stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, it's going to be a game of catch up for us, as we're pretty backlogged with reviews. So we'll probably be doing a lot more reviews than normal in the month of December, in the hopes that we can get out as many reviews as we can before the end of the year, in the hopes that it'll kind of fill out our top 10 coffees of 2024 list, though I do have a pretty good idea of what's already going to be on there. So definitely stay tuned for that. But I think for the most part, that's how I'm going to leave this recap. As I always say, if you guys are enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a recap of our reviews from the month of November 2024. Thank you for watching.